the recording started. So here we go. Welcome. This is the special meeting of the Woodbridge Conservation Commission. It is today's July 16th, 2020. This is our virtual meeting, and in accordance with Governor Lamont's Executive Order 7B, Section 1, it suspends the open meeting requirements for in-person. All public comments should have been submitted to me by 3 p.m. Eastern today. I did not receive any public comments in that time period. So the first agenda item of public comments is going to just move right on past. The second item on tonight's agenda is an update on the Conservation Commission members. So we had some change over the last few months when we were not meeting. Susan Gaterland resigned. She is changing her role. She has some new professional endeavors that she's pursuing, and we wish her the best. So that leaves a vacancy where she was. But welcome to Kate Rosen. Kate joins us in an unusual way. Normally we do this in person, and that continuity of meetings that she kind of slides right into. But we've had this break. Our last meeting was technically in January. So February, March, April, May, June, 5 months. 5 months, no meetings. So I don't know how the other members feel, but I personally feel like it's been a real reset and kind of lost momentum from where we left off in January. So in some ways, it could be good that Kate's coming when we're at that low point and we're going to build ourselves back up and get the energy moving again. So whenever we bring in new members, I like to just quickly go around for introductions. I'll start with myself, Jason Morrill, Chair of the Conservation Commission. I've been on the Conservation Commission since 2013, I think it is, or 14. Prior to that, I was involved with the Massaro Community Farm, the Clean Energy Task Force in the town, and the Historical Society. I'm a backyard gardener. I'm a beekeeper when I have bees, no bees this year. And I really enjoy the trails in town. I'm going to pass it over to Sharon.
Hi, I'm Sharon. I also am a gardener, and I was on the Wetlands Commission for a number of years and joined this commission about a year ago, and also enjoyed it. Particularly this past few months, I've been enjoying the open space and reviews.
All right, Frank.
Hi, I'm Frank DeLeo, and I've been on the Conservation Commission for 3-4 years now, and I enjoy the trails. I'm also a gardener, by the way, although my garden's not doing that well this year. I have a little guest there. Yeah, I do. I got to go for it. But at any rate, I also have an electric fence, by the way. I just put that up. That's not important. I'm an advocate of the West River. I'm really involved with building trails along the West River and river advocacy. So that's about it. And I enjoy the trails in town, hiking. Also the West Rock, all the trails around the area, not just in town.
All right, thank you, Frank.
Welcome, Kate.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome, Kate.
Thank you.
All right, Kate, how about a little bit about you?
I am Kate Rosen. This is my first commission. I'm very excited. I am also a gardener, and I have chickens. But my biggest thing is I'm an avid transportation cyclist, and so if you spot someone riding around on a very large white cargo bike, usually with a kid in the back, that's probably me. And we've very much enjoyed the trails in town since we've been here, but especially with COVID, clamoring for space where there aren't a lot of people so we can get exercise. And they're just all beautiful. We're very lucky here. So I'm excited to work with all of you.
All right.
Great.
Welcome, Kate. All right, so I did mention there's still a vacancy. If you have anybody in mind that you think would be a good fit to join conservation, let me know and we can pass that up to the town. So right now we're down one person, but we'll get that filled as soon as we can. All right, back to business. We are going to review and approve the minutes of the January meeting. So tonight I'm gonna on and off share my screen here. And I'm not sure how clear it'll look on everybody else's screen. If you're looking at this in a grid view, you probably want to change the view to the active speaker window. I guess that's what WebEx calls it. That way it'll fill your screen up. But these are the minutes that were circulated around earlier. It was good for me to go back and review them to kind of refresh where we left off back in January. They looked good to me, so I'm going to make a motion that we approve the January 16th, 2020 minutes.
I'll second it.
I'll third it.
All right, is there any discussion about the minutes? No discussion? Then I will call the vote. All in favor of approving the minutes? Aye.
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 All right, minutes approved. So since we're just getting back into the groove here, and Kate is coming on board, I thought this was a good time to go back and review sort of our objectives and our goals. And that will start with the town plan of conservation and development, which was adopted back in 2015. In that document, there is an open space section specifically, and there are some other sections that get into open space topics. And tonight I'm just going to focus on the open space section specifically, and I'll bring that on the screen here. So I'm going to back up a couple pages just so we have the full visual. So chapter 6 in the open space plan, in the plan of conservation and development, specific to open space. It covers classifications of open space. It highlights some preservation goals. It summarizes open space and the various levels of protection. Then we get into the visuals, the map. That's really helpful to see what is open space. This one talks about the levels of protection. And then it gets into how we're using it. Recreation facilities. This highlights just the big blocks of property that are used for recreation. The two that are in the center of town that everybody knows, the Fitzgerald Tract and the Alice Newton Street Park. And then it talks about future rec needs, alignment with open space. It talks briefly about use designations, and this is something that we don't yet have something formalized, but it was mentioned in the POCD. We talked briefly about a framework for open space acquisition and classification. This is still something that needs to get fleshed out. And this is just an overall map of properties that could be acquired. And then it gets into acquisition. And this is where I'd like us to sort of start our review. So, and I'll try to scroll this down. Under the ongoing action agenda, the continuous outreach to conservation-minded landowners. So people in town that have large parcels might be moving out of town. Maybe they want to sell it, or someone is buying a large parcel, but they don't want all of it, and they can get a tax write-off if they sell or give part of that to the town. So it's important to be mindful of who's coming, who's going, and staying connected with the people in town, especially those that are conservation minded. We want to continue to support our land trust and parks association, two organizations in town that are landowners and conservation minded, so the Woodbridge Land Trust and the Woodbridge Parks Association. We continue to maintain the conservation inventory, so the list of the parcels, as well as in our current open space plan, we started dipping into a inventory of flora and fauna, which sort of opens the doors really wide. There's a lot in that, and it might be a bigger project than we can handle ourselves, but it falls under the inventory. Supporting the recreation plan and supporting the West River Watershed Compact. So back in 2015, I'm pretty sure the West River Watershed was not yet fully protected as a greenway, but today it is. And thanks much in part to Frank, as well as the partnership of Woodbridge and the West River Watershed Coalition. So those are things that we just continuously do. They're all good things. Near-term action agenda. This is, and there's no dates on this, but in line with the Plan of Conservation and Development is a 10-year document. It was adopted in 2015. It will be renewed in 2025. So we're halfway through. And keep that in mind as we look at some of these action items and consider our goals and objectives for 2020 through 2025. Develop a classification system for open space. We'll get into this in more detail. It's definitely on our radar of something that we need to do. Developing an open space maintenance plan. This is something that's been talked about. It's been crept into a little bit in the trail maintenance plan. The town has adopted a general trail maintenance plan. And since the trails are in much of the open space, I will arguably say that there's a little bit of work that has been put into open space maintenance plan in terms of trails in the open space, but it needs more work. Promoting the town's recreation facilities. I think this might fall outside of our purview, other than encouraging people to use our trails, as well as the open space at Fitzgerald Tract as well. Remember the good old days of 2015, examine the Country Club of Woodbridge lands. I'm pretty sure that is still, that is still being examined. So then we have midterm action agenda, revise the Woodbridge open space plan. Back at the beginning of this year, in January, we did release a revision to the open space plan. So this box can be checked, although it should be reviewed annually and revised as needed. And develop a formal policy and procedure for acquisition of open space and publicly owned properties. This is something that we've been working towards, but we haven't finalized it yet. And I think that's it. So there are some other, actually, it says right here, related actions. Chapter 5 and Chapter 7 for related items. So it's worth cruising through the Plan of Conservation and Development, and you don't have to read it and quickly absorb it, but keep in mind conservation and open space and management as you go through the Plan of Conservation and Development. And I think you'll find some things that jump out at you and align well with the Conservation Commission. Has anybody besides me actually read through the whole thing? Keep nodding your head.
Jason, can I weigh in on that? I did went through a lot of that also. I was kind of interested in the bike routes that they talked about along Litchfield Turnpike, and I don't know if we weigh in on that, but I thought that was an important issue to improve the sidewalks and bike routes so we have better pedestrian access to to the road, along the roads, especially along Litchfield Turnpike in that area. We have a real scenic area by the Shepherd Farms there, and also between Knowles Pond and West Rock Ridge. The other issue I saw there was in the plan of conservation and development, they intend to develop that area between West Rock Ridge and Knowles Pond. And I really think that should be conserved. Much of that should be conserved because it is a conservation area of the West Rock State Park. And I believe, any property that needs to be sold there has to get have the first right of refusal by the state. I understand that's how that works. So I think we should look into that area at some point, see if there's any landowners that are, other than Mr. Nugent, that are willing to sell any properties along that area. That's my take on it.
Frank, which side of the Litchfield Turnpike were you referring to?
Well, they're talking about a bike route. There's a couple things that I zeroed in on. A bike route along Litchfield Turnpike. I would think that it would be on the east on the east side of Litchfield Turnpike. I would think that would be the bike route. The other thing that was talked about and I mean, I don't mean to go off on a tangent, but I'm just trying to connect things here. The other thing they talked about was some access to the Indian trails by the Wells Fargo Bank, like stairs or some way to access those trails. And I know we talked in other meetings about bringing the connection down Bradley Road from the Indian trails by the Wells Fargo Bank on Amity Road there. You follow where I'm talking about, Jason? Yeah, it's pretty steep there, and there was talk about them, in the plan of conservation development. I think that we should encourage that. Get a good, some stairs or some access there that's better than what we have, and also finish that sidewalk on Bradley Road and connect it to run along Knowles Pond at some point. I think we should encourage that.
Okay.
That would tie those trails eventually together. That whole section which we're trying to put together.
Absolutely. Is everybody able to see the screen? I tried to bring up the map here so everyone can sort of visualize.
I see the screen, but I haven't heard of any of that stuff. So can people fill us in a little bit? Or I don't know if this is the right time to do that, but.
I have the exact language. I'm happy to read those bullet points if that's helpful. It's in the Woodbridge Village Action Plan, and it was number 1 on their ongoing design priorities. And it was develop bicycle lanes on key routes in addition to petitioning CTDOT for bicycle improvements on Amity Road and Litchfield Turnpike and provide designated connection via Landon Street. And then the next bullet is creating functional pedestrian corridors, but that would be through Selden. I don't have the exact page, but it's before our section. It's chapter 2 in the plan.
Well, that's great, Kate. But yeah, that's the plan to try to get some access for bike routes and better pedestrian access. It's actually dangerous down there the way it is now. Route 69 and 63 are both kind of narrow, especially 69.
Yep.
Okay.
And Frank, were you referring to another development that was possibly going on?
Well, yeah, and the plan of conservation and development is talking about developing that area between Canol's Pond. It would be on the east side of Canol's Pond on the east side of Canol's Pond, between Canol's Pond and the West Rock Ridge there.
Okay.
Yeah, right in that area. Yeah, they're talking about doing more development there, and that's a we have two major resources there: Canol's Pond and the West Rock Ridge. They're both great natural resources, and I just think that if any development is done there, it's got to be very non-intrusive. I guess that's the word, that I could come up with.
Yep.
I
And
just think we ought to look at that.
I agree. And just for background for Kate and Sharon on this, for years, the Conservation Commission has been talking about connecting the trails. So I'll move the map up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Up here is the large parcel of the Darling House. The Darling House sits right about in this area.
Huh?
And then there's the trail network back here. West Rock is all on this side.
Right?
The Conservation Commission has been trying for years to acquire this parcel right here. It's 28 acres. This one right behind it is the city of New Haven. They're not going to be doing anything with it. It's also almost vertical. It's all straight up West Rock.
Mm-hmm.
And then this parcel below it, state of Connecticut. So between the town's Darling House property and state of Connecticut property, there are some trails. There's this one parcel that's not been developed that has been trying to get acquired for many years, and just have not had
Who owns it?
legal terms. What was that?
Who owns it?
It's owned, and according to this, James Nugent. So we've been calling it the Nugent property.
And
But if that were to be acquired, if that were to be acquired, we could then connect Darling House property down to state of Connecticut property. And you can see in the red outline, that's pretty far down. With the intent of bringing out a trail into the Bradley Road area over here. There's the big recreation facility down in this area. And it could lead to a sidewalk/street connection down across Bradley Road, and as Frank mentioned, over to the Wells Fargo Bank. And from there, it leads you into town of Woodbridge property and what's called the Indian Trail Network over on this part of town.
And who has the other property right next to that, closer to?
So
No.
this is West Rock Materials.
No, I'm talking about by the Indian Trails. There's another triangular.
Oh, this one?
Yeah.
That one's a private owner. Apparently it's owned by an LLC. It was up for sale not too long ago. But the other parcel is town of Woodbridge, and then you get into the public utility. So there is this
Yeah.
odd triangular piece, but the trails kind of skirt around it quite a bit.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So
Okay, that's helpful.
I just wanted to bring that up because that's some background information about the Canolds Pond area and the general overall goal of extending the greenway. And if we were able to make that connection through the Nugent property behind Canolds Pond and up to the Indian Trails, the town of Woodbridge would then have a completely circular trail network that you could jump on. And it's about, last time I did a very rough measurement, it's about a 13-mile hike.
I have another question. Into Canol's Pond, there's like yellow lines. What are those? Yeah.
This is perhaps the most bizarre thing I've seen. So the town of Woodbridge owns that parcel and that parcel,
Who owns the actual pond?
but the pond is Luciani,
Really?
except for these odd little,
And they can't do much with it because it's wetlands, right?
Yeah,
And do they want to sell that or no?
I don't think anyone's ever really approached them
Okay.
just because.
Well, I did have a conversation with a couple of the Lucianis right along Canol's Pond, and I talked about a possible walk in that area there, and they weren't weren't exact. They were more or less in favor of it. They didn't have a problem with that. You know, a walk by the pond there.
Yeah.
They
And
thought
is
it was a consideration that would be considered. But the other thing, Jason, is also if we ever could get that trail down, it would also lead to there's a trail above the tunnel. I don't know if anybody realizes that, which could be tied into the West Rock Ridge trails.
Yep.
Yeah. By the ball field, we could go end up by the ball field and then up along the ridge there. There's another trail that goes above the tunnel and just slightly to the south of it, and then up to the top of the ridge, and it ties in with the Blue Trail on West Rock, which goes from north to south on West Rock. The Blue Trail does, I mean.
Yep.
So we could tie all that together, which would be.
Yeah.
There's a lot of possibilities if we can get that area taken care of.
Absolutely.
So, Jason, I know I probably should understand this, but let's say we decide we really want the Nugent property, like, then is it a process that we have any authority, or do we have to go through the town to utilize the money that we have?
We have to go through the town. The town has to be the one that engages with the property owners unless they designate one of us to do it. In the past, we merely recommended it, and then Betsy would reach out to the owners and try to negotiate. But so far, the owners, and I'll move over to that parcel again. So it's this parcel here.
And has Betsy actually contacted those people ever, and have they responded?
Yes, it's been ongoing for many years. And
So you're basically saying they're not very interested in parting with it.
not particularly. In fact, going way back in time into the late 90s, they were approached as well. And at that time, they were interested if the price was right. And for them, the price wasn't right.
And is there any possibility of them letting us put trails through it even if they don't want to sell it?
Well, we started with that discussion most recently, meaning back in 2019. And the last I heard is that there was already some negotiation of them selling the property to some other private owner, but I haven't heard anything about it since then. And
The latest on that, I believe, is that can I intervene for a second, Jason?
Yeah.
I believe the Woodbridge Land Trust was having a discussion with the Nugent people about that property. I don't know where it's gone so far, but I believe they still were negotiating with them about acquiring the property.
All right. I'll just overlay some things on here. You can see the front of the property on Litchfield Turnpike is very deep. And then you go through massive amounts of wetlands, which is the West River, into the back portion of the property. And then farmland soils, which are in some ways protected, that run through part of the back of the property. So it would be a difficult property to develop, but whoever would try it. But if the land trust has been able to break through, it is fantastic.
Jason, would it make any sense for you to talk to some of the people in the land trust to talk about where they're at, and we could add our support to it? Because
Yep. I'll add it to my notes over here. Okay. All right, so that took a tangent I wasn't expecting. But this is good. This is, getting our minds back in the game, filling in some background for Sharon and Kate. So let me switch back over to the Plan of Conservation and Development, which helps drive the open space plan, and I'll bring that up. So we had, where to go? This. So this is the most recent version of the open space plan. It's on the website. I'm pretty sure I had circulated a copy in an email to everybody as well. And in this document, we've got objectives that align with what was in the Plan of Conservation and Development, as well as additional objectives that weren't necessarily in there. Some of them have been brought over from prior revisions of the open space plan. But I thought it would be worthwhile to talk through these just to get everybody, again, focused on what we're going to be working on. So, property classifications, ratings, and identifications. That is hand in hand with how do we assess properties for acquisition. And a tool that we are very close to finishing, and it could be something that we could focus on wrapping up for 2020. Designations of open space, use designations of open space. This was also in the POCD. The intent here was to better define how parcels that people perceive as being protected may not be. For example, the best example in town is the Fitzgerald parcel. People see it as a real treasure, that it's open space, it's protected, it'll be walking trails, it'll be farming, it'll be community gardening forever. But the reality is that it does not have that level of protection. And having a clear document that explains use designations and how those are applied to the various open space parcels in town will be really, really helpful in forming constructive discussions in town when people talk about how do we want to use the property at Fitzgerald, or how do we want to use the property over on Acorn Hill that's currently baseball fields, or over on Kings Road. So the intent of that objective is to set forth some clear definitions to have those discussions. Another objective that's in the POCD is the open space management plan. That's sort of a big document that's going to take a while. It's going to be one of those things to chip away at and break it down into manageable stuff. The review of properties worthy of acquisition. Later in the open space plan, there is a list of properties. They are not listed in any particular order because we didn't have a rating system that can clearly delineate what is more important than another. And this is a discussion that we've been kind of going around in circles on for years. And it's another reflection back to the objective further up, rating and identification of parcels. That if we can get that wrapped up, then the review of the properties will become much more clear and clean and efficient. These last ones are objectives that have been in the open space plan for many years. The Fitzgerald property protection, I mentioned it before. People might presume that it's fully protected, yet it's not. So there could be an effort to actually make that happen, to actually protect the property in perpetuity. And the last few objectives here, developing trails through existing golf courses. This was set forth prior to the town actually acquiring the former Woodbridge Country Club. And that is still an ongoing discussion. I know people definitely use the old cart paths as trails. I use it myself for recreation, but there's nothing formal in place. And the trails on, and I'll just go on a little tangent. The trails on the former country club could easily connect at Park Lane to the Indian Trail Network, or south down Johnson Road towards the Racebook Tract entrance on the Woodbridge side.
Or what track did you say? I know the Indian Trails, and what did you say?
The Racebook Tract.
Oh, right, okay.
So these last two, recreation near Town Hall and Rice Pond, this was an older objective, and its intent is still somewhat obscured by the fog of time. But it does talk about the area where the tennis courts are, the baseball/soccer fields, the child's playground, and the pavilion, all in that area next to Town Hall and the maintenance facility. And then greenway extensions, we actually dipped into this a little bit just not too long ago, talking about the West Rock and Bradley Road area with the ability to extend our greenway in a functional way. I'd be more than happy to go into a long discussion about greenway extensions. I've got a map of the entire town. It's color coded with all the trails and how we could add more trails to connect things, but not tonight. We can save that for another time.
Well, Jason, I think we need to pick one or two of these and just do them. Because I feel like I know I haven't been on this commission long, but I feel like we review a lot, but don't really dig into anything. And I think, or as much as would be useful. And I think if we chose, okay, we want to protect the jail property, or we want the greenway extensions, or and we 6 months just kind of about that, or we want to prioritize the properties. I'd like to choose one or two goals and then sort of.
I couldn't agree more. We need champions for the objectives. Each objective needs a champion, someone that's got the time, someone's got passion.
I think we need to hold a meeting with just one of the objectives in mind and kind of dig through it and see if we become the champions and see if we get excited enough about it to get invested. I think without that, out of the blue, I don't feel prepared to champion any of them because I don't have enough investment in any of them specifically. I like the general idea of preserving the town, but I haven't cultivated a specific one that would be most important. So
something else that I had circulated, which gets to actually stays in the same vein, the open space objectives with measures. So this is something, and this is sort of working back up to where we left off in January. I had tried to break out the objectives and put some bullets into them. And how do we measure our success and completion of each objective? So picking this first one as an example, if we were to say that we wanted to work on this one, we need to finalize it. We need to define the subjective measures. We have objective measures that are fairly well set forth, and we'll look into that another time. And then go through and test it by rating the properties. So there's some measures here. And I had done the same for the other objectives. I can't remember. I think we had gone through this in the January meeting, but this is getting a little foggy in my brain from 7 months ago. Does it look familiar to you, Sharon or Frank?
not really. But
Yeah, we did talk about it. I remember we talked about taking it out on a field trip and kind of having a hike and having different people use the criteria and see how they compared once we get all the criteria down as far as for the rating system. I remember doing that.
Okay.
Hmm.
So,
But I don't specifically remember what we're talking. What you're saying about the objective rating system.
Right.
I think we need more work on that.
yep. So I think to Sharon's point, I would love to spend one meeting, could even be a special meeting, and just pick an objective and kind of plant our flag in the ground and say, this is the one we have the best chance of completing in a reasonable time period. It doesn't mean we can't work on the other ones, but this is going to be our focus moving forward.
Yeah. But I'm finding it hard to get my psyche around an objective, like to measure land. I find that's such a complex thing, and it's so subjective that I think it would take us going to the land and, talking to an environmentalist and I think something like the Fitzgerald property or trying to acquire a piece of land or something, or connect the greenway, something more tangible would be something I could probably get more involved in more easily. I don't know how other people feel. I know, Jason, I bet you want this document kind of done and wrapped up, and I just don't know how I can get behind that as easily as.
And I agree. I think every objective is probably going to have a different champion behind it and to have a support crew as well. But I think it would be important if someone could identify themselves as the lead for a particular objective. My personal tendency is I like organization and structure to things. So I tend to develop plans and rating systems. And it's something that helps me organize myself to be effective with conservation. And Sharon, you indicated that you've got the passion of going after something tangible. And I think that's great.
But I don't think I don't have enough passion to carry it. I think we all have to choose one. Like if that's really what you want to do, I'll get on board on your rating system, because I think we're already too small a group. And if we're each championing something different, I don't think the likelihood of us coming up with an outcome is as good as if we all sort of kind of band together and choose one thing to really do. But I know I'm taking a lot of time, but Jason, so let's say we get a rating system. Does that mean we will then, what are we going to do with that besides having a rating system? Will we then actually try to get a piece of land that's the top of the rating system and go after it? I mean, because a rating system is only as good as being able to protect the land that we've rated as important.
Right, exactly. And the point is that you can objectively and subjectively come up with a rating in that way. You know which property is going to be most worthy of acquisition in the town.
And so would we take like the 30 properties? I'm just thinking tangibly, we take the 30 or 40 properties and apply a criteria and create A through Z list of what we think is the most important, or like 3 A's, 2 B's, and
Yep.
Yep.
I had already gone through, this was an overall on parcels that were already in the open space plan. And these numbers, the higher the number, the better. And those numbers are based upon the ratings that we had worked on some years ago. This was a paper review that I had done back in the end of 2018 with the various criteria. And all criteria have got their own definitions behind it, so that it's possible to have a very clear understanding of why did a certain parcel get a score of 102 when another property got a score of 225.
So I don't know how other people feel. Like it looks like you've already done a lot of work on this, and maybe we should just dig into this document at some point and try to see if we all agree, and if there's other criteria we want to add after we all have thought about the property and maybe go see a property. I mean, I don't know the best way to dig into it, but it seems like you've done so much on this, it would be nice to get it to the final, across the finish line.
I couldn't agree more. I feel like we've been inches from the goal line for a long time on this. And it,
Well, how do you feel, Frank and Kate, about doing that? Well, that would be helpful to Jason, right?
Well, much of your objective and subjective is already in this rating system that we've developed so far, isn't it, Jason?
yeah, we've put a lot of work into it over the years.
I think much of it is. There might. It's just fine tuning now. I think, from what I could see, I don't think we're far from the goal.
Should we take our next meeting to just go through them with the map and try to
See if there's any we should change, or
All right.
Yeah, and then if a parcel comes up, even if it's a 165, but it's available and it's a good price, then we try to figure out the area that we want to change. Like, we can actually get this piece and it is somewhat good. It's not as, and I don't think we want to wait forever for Warren Road if two other parcels lower down come the possibility, because who knows when Warren Road would become available, right? I mean, Jason, think
Yep.
too?
Yep.
But we don't necessarily want, like, you know, something that's way down on the list necessarily.
Yeah. So just to back out a little bit on this, the idea behind creating the rating system was to move away from the type of property descriptions that are elsewhere. So back to the open space plan here. So just as an example, 20 Blue Trail, this was the description of the parcel, but it wasn't clear how does that stand amongst the other parcels that are out there that are available. It's got the subjective items that people like to look at. There's a Boy Scout camp nearby. It's a large parcel. It arguably provides natural shelter for many forms of wildlife, but other parcels could do the same and that might also be large. So what would make this one more attractive than others? So the idea was to put in something objective, clear, and develop a rating system instead of just a list of attributes. So I am all for pushing this one over the goal line. And if we wanted to spend the next meeting going through it.
Or we're gonna assume that it's gonna take more than one meeting. But I also just think that, you know, someone noticed the quarry and they noticed the laurels, but we have to acknowledge there's so much we aren't noticing, like maybe an important type of salamanders there, or incredible trees, or it has a fungus we don't know about. So I just think that just because we notice some things does not, it's inherently a flawed system. So that's why I think that it's a little tricky for me to get to be so much A, B, C, D as this group, if any of them becomes available, it's worth our attention. If this group is less worth our attention, and if it's something that becomes available, then wouldn't we want to look at further to decide if it really does have other features that are more important that we underestimated, even if it's not the top choice.
Jason, it would be really helpful as kind of the new member if we did spend some time going over your system, and then as Sharon mentioned, we have time then to kind of gather our thoughts around each of the properties and observe more and add them to the list. This is exciting, and then I don't, you know, if we can do that, and then I like the idea of talking with the WLT about the other property.
Yep. All right, well, that sort of gets down to the agenda item number 7, which was to discuss and decide upon priorities to focus on for 2020. So I think we've sort of just naturally settled into, let's try to get this rating system knocked out so that we can move on or looking at the properties and the other objectives that need our attention.
Excellent work, Jason. It looks cool. I'm excited to learn more.
Yeah. Can I just put in a plug for, then in 2021, we can work on connecting greenways like Frank has been working on, and also protect the Fitzgerald property, because with the dog park and new benches, I'm just keenly aware that that protection would be helpful for everything. If someone wants to create a badminton court or this or that on it in the near future.
Definitely.
So the priority is the rating system. Is that what we're calling this?
Yep.
For open space. And then, so that's 1 and 2 might be the greenway. I mean, should I put this in, or
Yes.
greenway connections?
You don't write it down, it didn't happen.
So, when was it we elected officers last year?
Say that again. When was the elected
Officers.
president?
Yeah.
Oh,
How often does that happen? Mostly I'm concerned about secretary.
We can change them at any time. There's no, as I understand, there's no formal bylaws that say it only happens in March of an even year or whatever. So,
Okay, well, I'd like to bring that up as an agenda item for next.
fair enough. Fair enough. There was one agenda item that we skipped over. It was the discussed list of properties of interest of acquisition. I think we did dip into it a little bit. Leland wanted to specifically bring up a parcel that's actually nearby his house. It's the farm, is it Mary Mountain Farm? It's where Chris Sorensen farms. And it's in our list of properties of interest as 17 Woodbine Lane. I can show, since I've got the map up already, see if I can pull it up here, Cowpath, Clark. So we're talking about this area here.
Is that for sale?
So far as I understand it, it is not for sale. And just for visual reference, here's the high school over on the left, and the back entrance to the high school comes out almost straight across.
And where's Leland's property?
This one.
Are there rules in place for suggestions not being, like not asking the Conservation Commission to purchase property next to our houses?
There's definitely the feeling of conflict of interest in some ways here. But in this case, this parcel has been on the list for a while, so it's not on the line to bring it up. And it gets into the farmland protection, and that's something that we're keen on in town as well, is protecting farmland. Leland's not here tonight, so he can't speak to the specifics of whether or not this parcel is coming up for sale or if he's heard anything, but I just wanted to mention it to everybody in case it does come up in the future.
Well, that piece of land would be more than what we have in our reserves, right?
Quite likely. The open space fund that the town is sitting on, I want to say it's somewhere around 65 or 70,000. And that's just a real ballpark number. Any property that we would look to acquire, we would have to go out and find some grants. Sorry, there's a dog in here. Matching grants from the state or federal government or private foundations. Collaborating with the Woodbridge Land Trust.
Jason, the town has an agricultural commission as well, right? Do they have funds? Do we know that? Where they could be potentially interested in the farmland portion of it?
So I was actually going to dip into that a little bit in my chairman's report, but I'll just dip into it now. I know the Ag Commission was formed, but I don't know if they've actually met. And I don't know anything at all other than the few bullet points that were put out about its purpose. So I'm hoping to learn more in the next coming weeks as things start to come back, and the commissions like ours that haven't had anything pressing in front of them start holding meetings and getting themselves back into the swing.
Can I just ask you a question, Jason? Who's the property owner next to that property on the other side of the railing?
This one,
Well, that one too, but the one below, the one south of it.
this is another large one. I think they're both in some of the discussions that you'll find in the open space plan. You'll find these two parcels sort of lumped together because they do, as you can see, the farmland sort of spills over.
Are they the same owner? It looks like they might be the same owner.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. And do we know who those people are at all?
Yes.
You do?
I just hear Frank saying yes.
You know them, Frank?
No, I just noticed that what you just said, the same owner owns, so they split up into more than one lot, right?
Yeah.
Can you guys hear
no.
me?
Oh, I hear another voice.
Oh my God! I've been listening to you guys. It's Leland here, but for somehow, they denied me because it was the wrong email and password. But I've been listening all along. Yes, I'm so sorry.
Well, I'm glad you were with us, Leah.
So, and Kate, how do you do? Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So Joe Negrario bought this property from the Hubbles about 20 years ago for the purpose of developing it. And he is a developer, and he has, in the last 4 months, had done perk testing and surveying to do and put road in and develop the property, but he has not submitted a plan to the town of Woodbridge as yet. The property has been farmed since by the Hubbles and Sorensens since Woodbridge was founded in 1784.
Wow.
And it has been farmland since 1784. Joe, we have approached Land Trust, and we've had Elizabeth Moore down from the state, and there is some movement for the Land Trust to purchase this land or get development rights for this land, development restrictions. The reason I'd asked Jason to put it on the agenda is because I was on planning and zoning back in 2003, 4, 5, and 6, and we had identified this as one of the top 5 properties to protect. There are adjacent to the farmlands are, I think, 18 or 19 acres of wetland that we're hoping are protected as well. But so we're quite active trying to protect this property. I'm hoping the Conservation Commission is going to make some kind of statement to try and help protect this property. I agree with Sharon's earlier comment that relative to the amazing work that Jason has done to put together a spreadsheet and a grid to sort of analyze properties, I think we need to pick several properties that are most endangered, such as this property of development. And I think we need to focus on those properties while we also try and complete this grid, this rating system that Jason's worked so hard on. But I think all of us are so busy that in the end, we really need to focus on the properties that are most threatened immediately. And I see this, and again, as you know, this property is adjacent to my house. So conflict of interest, yes, I I certainly, am interested in protecting it as an adjacent property owner. But I think more than that, the property has a road that goes since the founding of Woodbridge from the West River, from the Thomas Darling House all the way up through to the center of Town Hall, which also runs through my property. And it's, has extraordinary historic importance, as well as being a land that's been farmed for the entire history of Woodbridge.
Interesting.
I think we should definitely look into it, Jason. I mean, and
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad Leland jumped in. He had background that I wasn't aware of.
Well, and the other interesting piece of this is I think at this point, the state is very interested in putting up 75% of the money to purchase the development rights on the property. And the land trust has voted to support this as well. And I think it's a good opportunity for us to maybe work in conjunction with the land trust to try and support this. Chris Sorensen and myself are also prepared to invest some significant dollars to protect this land. And as you know, with the conservation easements from the state for agricultural land, they need 25% of funds other than the state fund to protect it. But I think what's going to happen is I believe Joe's intention is to apply to planning and zoning and to get a better assessment of what he thinks the market rate of the property is worth. And then that will become the number at which he proposes, to sell the development rights.
Wait, who is he gonna look to find out the number of TP&Z?
Yeah, so I think Joe is going to apply to planning and zoning for a subdivision for single-family homes and a road to develop the farmland. And I think that's part of his negotiation to determine what the market value of that property will be. But he is open. I mean, we've met twice, and he is open to selling the development rights. And interestingly enough, the Hubbles and the Sorensens still live in the farmhouse where they lived 350 years ago.
Seriously?
They're still farming the land, even though they rent it for $1 from Joe a year.
pretty amazing. What's the acreage, Leland? Offhand,
I believe, and I need to check for sure, but I think it's 19 acres of wetland and 44 acres of farmland.
Yeah, it looks like a huge
It was
parcel.
in the 2005 Conservation Development Plan. It was one of the top 5 properties to be protected and actually identified in the plan.
Jason, when you're speaking with WLT, do you mind, they're the group that purchased the Baldwin Farm or the Baldwin Road Farm, correct?
They were.
I think I would be curious to know if they've also considered this piece. I mean, they were very effective fundraisers for that property, and if it's something that can be kind of jointly looked at by them, by the Ag Commission and us.
So it is the same group that's been pushing this preservation of farmland.
So I have a question with this. So let's say the land trust and the state are involved, and you, Leland, and the Sorensens are willing to put in money. How would we then, are you thinking that the Conservation Commission would just lend its psychic support, or actually say we'll ask the town to put in a portion of our $65,000 into that? It doesn't actually.
Sharon, I'm not really sure. I mean, this is all you know, obviously they have not presented anything to planning and zoning as yet. We have had a couple of meetings. I know the land trust has. I've also, and Chris and I have met with Joe. But so that your question is a really good one, and I'm thinking that there may be additional assistance needed, but certainly I think the support of the Conservation Commission to say that they think it's an important piece to protect is an important piece of all of this.
Yeah. Because I think I definitely get the sense it is an important piece to protect. I just think that have 5 or 6 different players, it might get hard to convince the town that we should put our resources into that when it's such a conglomeration. Or maybe that.
Well, and Sharon, I think you bring up an interesting point. I think, you know, maybe the Conservation Commission doesn't actually put some of our funds up, but that we merely, you know, and again, conflict of interest, as you're saying, Kate. So, you know, as an adjacent property owner, but I think we should at least assess the property as part of, as Sharon, you were suggesting, let's look at, you know, actual pieces and say, can we as a Conservation Commission say, you know, we think it's really important to preserve this as open space, right? Or restricted to farmland.
Well, also,
that's the limit of the involvement.
I mean, it sounds, Jason, you put the overlay of the wetlands on there. I'd like to see that again because it's tricky to develop without, I mean, really you'd be developing the farmland and not, you can't develop the wetlands. So.
Right, so I believe the current plan is to do 24 housing units and put a road in there, which would, and none of them would be in the wetland.
Right, so.
But I think one of the things we would like to do, my feeling is as a Conservation Commission, is minimally, if the land goes to development, is get the developer to donate all of the wetlands to open space.
Right, would be minimally. But I do think it's a piece to conserve, given its history.
I think we could advocate for the conservation of it, possibly. I think Sharon had a good idea. Let's look at it and see what the how it rates on our rating system, and then decide if we could be advocates for it.
Well, it certainly increases our interest in creating a rating system that, you know, substantiates it being a good idea to look at. And I think actually one of the factors, Jason, would be availability as a reason that it's good to look at too. I mean, that should give everything 50 points immediately, or 10, because a lot of it, even if it was valuable, may be being preserved by the people who own it, and may never be an issue that we need to, you know, intercede in.
Well, Sharon, this was actually one of the things that we've discussed in the matrix is that, you know, how do we rate imminent danger of development, right? You know, where do you put that? How do you figure out which of the properties are in the most danger of being developed, right? So it's just one other factor to put into the matrix. Jason, what was your thoughts on that?
It is one of those factors that changes every year.
Right.
And it's difficult to put into any sort of objective rating system because you can't say something is likely to be developed because my opinion of what might likely be developed is different from somebody else's opinion. So it's difficult to pinpoint something likely to be developed. I mean, you can look at history and say farmland is likely to be developed. And I think you can put hard facts on that one. But when you're comparing other properties in town that are not, for example, the Nugent property over here, compared with, there's a parcel over here on Park Lane somewhere. I'd have to zoom out, and make you guys all dizzy. But those parcels are likely to be developed as single homes. So I think there's different ways of looking
Jason,
at it. And
apropos to that, and I hope I didn't mention this already, is I went back and I looked at the 2005 Conservation and Development Plan and the 2015 Conservation and Development Plan. And in 2005, they identified properties that were undeveloped land without restrictions at 28%, right? And then in 2015, the same category without restrictions was 4%. So how did they go from 28% to 4%? I mean, the data, I think it's something we as a Conservation Commission ought to look at, because the input in the data doesn't make any sense that it went from 28 to 4%. And all of that still included the water company.
Huh.
You guys still there? Hello? Is our hour up?
Is anyone on?
I'm here. Can you hear me? Frank, can you hear me?
I think we're out of time.
I think we are, Frank. I don't know if you can hear me, but I can hear you.
Hey, Jason.
hey,
Hey. They gave us a,
Okay,
gave us
we're
a
back.
renewed hour.
all right. Sounds like Kate is still. Anyway, oh, we're getting an echo now.
I'm back, sorry.
Hi, Kate.
So
Yeah,
it sounds like what we're coming up to is that in the next meeting or so, to refine your rating system, knowing that it's flawed and it may change depending on what land is urgently needed to be done. And after that, sort of move on to, or in conjunction, it sounds like, because of what Leland is saying, that we need to look at the Sorensen property and then maybe look at protecting Fitzgerald. I know it seems like I live next to Fitzgerald, so I have a vested interest. I mean, vested interest only in that it's right next, you know, that it's valuable and I notice it, not that, I mean, I don't know if I need to recuse myself from that, but I do think that's been a question for the community gardeners, for everybody, and it will be worth dealing with at some point in the next year or two. But are we gonna have a meeting in August or not?
Yes.
Yep.
Sharon, I think the other thing we really need to drill down on is, because the Conservation and Development Plan is really the Bible which we have to live by, right? And I think the discrepancies in the numbers and the changes in the numbers between in the 10 years is a little bit shocking. I didn't even realize it till today when I drilled down into it. And I think that's worth some investigation to figure out what data is being used and what categorizations have changed to make those percentages so different, those acreages so different.
yep. we can certainly look at that.
Who, would we all look at that, or would you and Leland look at that, Jason? Or, I mean, I haven't, I'm not familiar enough with that I have to do a long, like.
I'd be happy, Jason, if you want to do that, I'd be happy to look at that with you.
Well, I'm going to let you take the lead on that one. You've got the burning ember in your hands.
Okay.
So what would you do? See what the criteria is from 2005?
So I'll try and compare the data and see why those numbers are so different. Because on the surface of it, you know, both categories are listed as, you know, conservation, development, land that's potentially developable, that does not have restrictions. And in both categories, in the little bit I looked at it, they included the Regional Water Authority. But I'll drill down and I'll try and make a little report.
That'd be great.
All right, I'm going to bring this to a conclusion with my chairman's report, which is just a very brief. I just wanted to acknowledge the passing of Louisa Cunningham. I know some of you did know her. It came to my attention that she passed in early July. She was a strong advocate for farmland and conservation and passive recreation on the trails. I worked with her at the Massaro Farm, as well as developing some documents in the town. So she will be missed. She will be remembered. And I think her legacy will continue on as we all work to come together and make sure that the open space is still here in town for years and years and years and generations to come.
Nice.
And with that, I'll move that we adjourn.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for the first successful virtual Conservation Commission meeting.